The year was 2534, and the galaxy as we knew it was on the brink of extinction. Innumerable stars, once beacons of life and civilization, now flickered out under the relentless assault of the Vakarth, a ruthless species that had emerged from the darkest corners of the Andromeda galaxy. Their technology was overwhelmingly advanced, their motives inscrutable, and their progress unstoppable. Planets fell one after the other, and with each conquest, the light of hope dimmed ever further. On the central planet of the Galactic Union, leaders from hundreds of worlds gathered in desperation. The Grand Council Chamber, a vast arena carved out of crystal and vibrating with the low hum of the galaxy's collective distress, was filled to the brim. Leaders, military officials, and scientists, faces etched with fear and fatigue, listened intently to the Premier's grim address. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Union," began Premier Leandra, her voice echoing through the chamber, "we face an existential threat unlike any before. The Vakarth have decimated our defenses and devastated our worlds. We are on the edge of total annihilation." A murmur swept through the crowd, a mix of dread and anticipation. Discussions had been many, and solutions few. Every proposed strategy had faltered, every counterattack had failed. The Vakarth seemed invincible. In the midst of despair, a lone figure stood up. It was Dr. Elias Radkov, a human and a leading expert in interspecies technologies. Humans, relatively new to the intergalactic scene, were not as technologically advanced as some other species, but they were known for their unique perspectives and unpredictable tactics. "Premier Leandra," Elias's voice cut through the murmurs, strong and clear. "There may be one possibility we haven't yet considered. I suggest we deploy a tactic that is uniquely human, unpredictable and unorthodox. It's risky, but at this point, what do we have to lose?" The chamber fell silent. Eyes turned to the human, a species many had underestimated. Leandra nodded, gesturing for him to continue. "We call it the Trojan Gambit," Elias explained. "It's a strategy of deception and surprise, something our history has proven effective in dire times. We propose constructing what appears to be a surrendering envoy. Inside, however, would be a team of our best operatives armed with the most potent weapons and technologies we can muster, including a prototype device that could disrupt the Vakarth's command network." Whispers filled the chamber. The idea of using deceit against such a powerful enemy was audacious. Some deemed it foolish, others saw it as a spark of hope. "Let's be clear," a voice boomed from the back. It was General Zorvath of the TVN Armada. "This plan could lead us into a trap, or worse, hasten our demise if it fails." "True," Elias agreed, "but strategic surprise could tilt the balance in our favor, even briefly. It gives us a chance to infiltrate their systems and gather intelligence, if not more." Premier Leandra considered the proposal, her gaze sweeping over the council. "We have little left to lose," she finally said. "Prepare the Trojan Gambit. Dr. Radkov, you will lead this mission. Assemble your team and be ready to deploy within the week." As the council erupted into frenzied activity, preparations began. Ships were retrofitted, and volunteers called forth. Elias knew the risks. His team knew the risks. They were stepping into the unknown, potentially sacrificing themselves to save countless others. As the ships readied and the team assembled, a sense of solemnity settled over everyone involved. They were the galaxy's last hope, a band of heroes called upon to perform an impossible task. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would not go quietly into the dark. The galaxy watched as the human-led mission prepared to make its daring play, a play that could either be their salvation or their ultimate end. Elias Radkov reviewed the crew gathered on the deck of the Goliath, a converted stealth carrier. It was an eclectic team: engineers, soldiers, a few rogue elements, and specialists from several species, each a master in their respective fields. As the ship hummed to life, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of determination and unease. "We're not just going to sneak in," Elias told his team, his eyes sweeping across the faces. "We're going to infiltrate their core, plant the device, and get out before they realize what's hit them. Precision is key." The Goliath soon slipped past the galactic barrier, cloaked by the latest in stealth technology. As they approached Vakarth territory, the star patterns changed, becoming unfamiliar and foreboding. The crew's focus was absolute, their mission critical. Aboard the ship, Mira Thal, a Tevian tactician and second-in-command, approached Eliash. "The Vakarth sensors are unlike any we've seen. One misstep and we could be exposed." Elias nodded, his mind racing with contingencies. "That's why we'll use the nebula drift. It'll mask our final approach. Once we're in, we rely on speed and silence." As they neared the Vakarth stronghold, a gargantuan station orbiting a dark planet, the Goliath veered into the shadow of a nebula, its colors dancing across the hull. The proximity alarms remained silent, their passage unnoticed. Inside the stronghold, chaos ruled under the guise of order. The Vakarth were methodical, their every move precise, their communications a series of sharp, punctuated bursts. Eliash and his team, disguised in captured uniforms, moved through the corridors, their appearance perfect down to the last detail. "Radkov to team," he whispered into his comlink. "Position at the rendezvous in 7 minutes. No deviations." The team split, each unit with specific objectives: disable communications, gather intelligence, plant the disruptive device. The station's heart pulsed with alien energy, a complex of nodes and conduits. In the communications hub, Jax, a spry hacker from the Solari Quadrant, tapped into the system. His fingers flew over the holographic interface, lines of code streaming by. The Vakarth network was a labyrinth, but Jax was its master for the moment. He injected a subroutine that began to loop the surveillance feeds. Meanwhile, Elias and Mira navigated to the central chamber. The device, a compact silver orb pulsating with soft blue light, was secure in Elias's pack. Reaching the chamber, he felt the weight of every step, aware that each moment could be their last. Mira scanned the area. "Clear. But hurry, we won't have long." Elias set the device in the heart of the network hub, initiating the activation sequence. Blue lights turned to red, a gentle hum escalated to a harsh whir. "Time to move," he signaled, and they retraced their steps, the station still oblivious to the danger within. Back at the rendezvous point, the team converged, each reporting success but aware the hardest part was yet to escape. As they moved towards the extraction dock, alarms blared. The Vakarth had discovered the anomaly. "Run!" Eliash commanded as they dashed through the tightening security. Laser fire zipped past, close enough to singe. The Goliath loomed ahead, its bay doors open and ready. They sprinted aboard, and as the doors sealed, Elias gave the order. "Punch it!" The ship lurched forward, just as Vakarth fighters appeared in pursuit. Behind them, the station erupted in a spectacle of light and debris, the device having reached its critical peak. The network was crippled, communications shattered. The Goliath twisted through the debris, dodging blasts and broken metal. As the stars stretched into lines of light, Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They had done it. They had delivered a crippling blow. But as the adrenaline faded, he knew this was just the beginning of their rebellion. The fight for the galaxy's future was just getting started, and their unexpected victory was but the first ripple in what was to come. The aftermath of the Trojan Gambit rippled through the galaxy, sending waves of shock and disbelief. The Invincible had been wounded, the Unstoppable stalled. News of the Vakarth stronghold's downfall, though heavily encrypted, spread like wildfire among the remaining free planets. Everywhere, from hidden rebel bases to the high councils of surviving civilizations, the same question was whispered. Had the humans truly found a way to fight back? Back on the Goliath, Elias Radkov and his crew barely had time to assess their success. As the ship hurtled through hyperspace, he convened a meeting with his core team, their faces illuminated by the glow of the command console. "We've struck a significant blow," Elias began, his voice steady despite the fatigue that pulled at his features. "But we should be under no illusion. The Vakarth will retaliate, and they will do so with ferocity we've perhaps not yet seen." Mira Thal, ever the strategist, chimed in. "Our next move needs to bolster this victory. We need allies, more resources. This act of defiance must spark a broader resistance." Elias nodded in agreement. "Exactly. Our success with the Trojan Gambit has bought us attention and, hopefully, some credibility. We leverage this, rally the Union planets to our cause. The discussion shifted to potential allies. The Tevians, skilled in warfare and tactics, the Silari, masters of stealth and espionage, and even the distant and enigmatic Zenkari, who controlled vital star lanes, all were considered crucial to forming a formidable front against the Vakarth. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Union's surviving leaders convened in secret, their communications scrambled and rerouted through myriad proxies. Premier Leandra addressed the assembly via hologram, her image flickering with the strain of the weak signal. "The human initiative has opened a path," she declared, her voice resolute. "It is imperative that we all contribute, coordinate strikes, share intelligence, and sustain this momentum." The plan was audacious. Coordinated, simultaneous strikes on Vakarth supply lines, communication nodes, and armaments depots. Each species would contribute according to their strengths, but coordination and timing were critical. The goal was to disrupt, disorient, and ultimately dismantle the Vakarth's operational capabilities across multiple fronts. As preparations ramped up, Eliash's team took on a new role. The Goliath was refitted once more, this time as a command vessel. From this mobile base, Elias and Mira would oversee operations, provide support, and ensure the flow of information between the Allied forces. The initial stages of the resistance saw a flurry of activity. Sabotage squads disabled Vakarth warships, hacker teams infiltrated their networks to steal or corrupt data, and guerrilla forces ambushed supply routes. Every victory served to embolden the resistance, each success a testament to the possible. On a personal mission, Elias led a team to a remote Vakarth outpost on the fringes of the nebular void. The objective was to capture a high-ranking Vakarth commander, hoping to gain invaluable intelligence. The operation was fraught with danger, the outcome uncertain. Stealthily, they approached the outpost, cloaked by the dense nebular gases. The assault was swift, resistance fierce. Blaster fire lit up the shadowy terrain as Elias and his team pushed forward. After intense skirmishing, they breached the command center, securing their target. The commander, a hulking figure with eyes like cold stars, was restrained and brought aboard the Goliath. Interrogation revealed cracks in the Vakarth's facade of unity. Factions within their ranks, each with differing visions for their species' future. With each piece of intelligence gleaned, the strategy refined, targeting not just the Vakarth's military might, but also their ideological divides. The Resistance's network expanded, each successful operation fueling the next, a cascading series of strikes that slowly but perceptibly shifted the balance of power. As the Goliath navigated through the star-studded darkness of space, Elias looked out at the stars, each one a silent witness to their struggle. The galaxy was changing, the Resistance was growing, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was a flicker of hope. They had begun to believe perhaps they might just win this war after all. The tension aboard the Goliath had shifted from desperation to a cautious optimism as reports of small victories began to accumulate like snowflakes in a burgeoning storm. The atmosphere among the crew, once thick with the pall of impending doom, now buzzed with strategic planning and fervent discussions of next steps. The capture of the Vakarth commander had not only provided them with critical intelligence, but also a psychological advantage. They had proven that the enemy was not invincible. In the depths of a secure room, the commander sat, a silent monolith surrounded by monitors and armed guards. His presence was a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Elias, with Mira at his side, scrutinized the data streams flowing from intercepted communications and recent raids. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Mira suggested, pointing to a cluster of systems on the holographic map. "These supply chains here are less fortified, but critical to their operations in the outer sectors." Elias nodded, his eyes tracing the lines of supply and demand that spread like a web across the galaxy. "And if we can incite unrest among the factions within their ranks, we could weaken them from the inside as well." The plan was set into motion. Teams were dispatched, not just with the aim to destroy, but to sow seeds of doubt among the Vakarth forces, to exploit the cracks that had begun to appear within their seemingly monolithic facade. Simultaneously, Elias initiated a campaign of diplomacy and subterfuge. Reaching out to those Vakarth factions dissatisfied with the war, he offered an alternative to the endless conflict. These were delicate conversations, fraught with the risk of betrayal, but necessary to fracture the enemy's unity. Back on the Union worlds, the impact of human-led successes sparked a renewed vigor in scientific research and weapons development. A particularly promising breakthrough was the development of a quantum disruptor, capable of temporarily disabling Vakarth ships' propulsion systems. The technology required precise calibration, and the risk of interception made its deployment a high-stakes gamble. As the disruptors were installed on select fleets, a coordinated strike was planned on a major Vakarth fuel depot located in the Hesperus system, a critical node supplying several active battlefronts. The assault would serve a dual purpose: to cut off fuel supplies and to test the new technology in live combat. The operation commenced under the shroud of cosmic dusk as Union ships, cloaked and silent, converged on the Hesperus system. The first wave disabled the perimeter defenses with surgical strikes from the quantum disruptors. What followed was a ballet of destruction and precision as the main assault force swept in. Elias, aboard the Goliath, monitored the operation, every successful hit a testament to the Union's growing capabilities, and every setback a point of learning. The depot erupted in a brilliant cascade of explosions, lighting up the void with fierce orange and red hues, colors of victory and warning alike. In the aftermath, the Union's Strategic Council convened, their faces illuminated by the glow of their victory on the display screens. "This was more than a battle won," Elias addressed the council. "It was a demonstration of our evolving capabilities and a blow to their operational heart. However, success in warfare was always shadowed by the cost. Casualty reports trickled in, and with them, a solemn reminder of the price of freedom. Each loss was mourned, each sacrifice honored in the continuing struggle. As the resistance solidified its gains, intelligence from various sectors hinted at a looming counterstrike by the Vakarth. The enemy was reeling but far from defeated. Preparations had to be doubled, defenses fortified, and alliances strengthened. Amidst this, an unexpected message arrived from a high-ranking Vakarth official, one from a faction that Elias had been in covert communication with. They offered a meeting, risky yet potentially game-changing, a chance to end the war through diplomacy. As the stars bore witness, Elias pondered the offer. This could be the turning point, a chance to shift from relentless combat to a negotiated peace. The path forward was fraught with uncertainties, but the promise of an end to the bloodshed compelled him to consider all possibilities. With the galaxy hanging in the balance, the decisions made now would ripple through time, shaping the future in ways yet unseen. Elias knew the next steps he took would not just be in pursuit of victory, but also of a lasting peace. The stakes were monumental, but so were the possibilities. The proposal for a meeting with the Vakarth faction was debated fiercely among the leadership of the Galactic Union. Trust was scarce. The wounds inflicted by the Vakarth were deep and fresh, and the idea of parleying with a foe so brutal and unyielding was met with skepticism. Elias, however, saw a thread of potential woven into the risky fabric of diplomacy. "We've fought to stand where we are today," Elias argued in the council. "If there's a chance this meeting could lead to a broader schism within their ranks or even a ceasefire, we owe it to those who've fallen to explore it." His words, imbued with the weight of their recent losses and victories, resonated. The council gave its reluctant consent, and preparations began for the clandestine summit. It was to be held on Neutral Station Zeta, a derelict space facility in the buffer zone, equally distanced from both human and Vakarth-controlled territories. As the Goliath made its way to the station, Elias and Mira reviewed every possible scenario, from a diplomatic breakthrough to an ambush. The team selected for the mission was small but diverse, each member an expert in combat, diplomacy, or espionage. The station loomed ahead, a silent sentinel against the backdrop of stars. Its halls, once bustling with commerce and dialogue, now echoed with the hollow sounds of disuse. As they docked, the tension among the team was palpable, each member alert and wary of every shadow and silence. Vakarth delegates arrived, their figures imposing, armored in the traditional war regalia of their kind. The initial greetings were stiff but courteous, each side acutely aware of the station's surveillance systems monitoring their movements and words. The discussions began with formalities, but soon delved into the core issues. The Vakarth faction expressed their growing discontent with the war's direction, the drain on resources, and the internal disputes it fomented within their ranks. Elias listened, gauging the sincerity of their words against the backdrop of strategic interest. "Our aim isn't conquest but stability," Elias stated clearly, his voice firm. "Continued conflict serves neither of our peoples. We propose a sector-by-sector ceasefire to begin negotiations for a more permanent resolution." The Vakarth were cautious, their responses measured, but as hours turned into cycles, a framework for ceasefire emerged, delicate and fraught with potential pitfalls, yet unmistakably a blueprint for peace. However, the galaxy does not pause for diplomacy. Mid-negotiation, alerts sounded through the station. Reports of a new Vakarth offensive flickered across the screens, a stark reminder of the factions still loyal to the warpath. The meeting was thrown into chaos, accusations hurled, and trust shattered in moments. Elias and his team were swift to react. "This attack was not sanctioned by those of us seeking peace," one Vakarth delegate asserted, his tone urgent. "We must use this moment to push for our leaders to accept ceasefire, to show them it is the only path forward." With the station on high alert, Elias communicated with the Union. "We have a potential agreement, but also a new offensive, proof of the divisions within the Vakarth. We must prepare for both peace and continued resistance." As the Goliath returned from the meeting, the crew was left to ponder the fragile duality of their situation. The ceasefire documents needed ratification, a process fraught with bureaucracy and the potential for sabotage. Meanwhile, the Union's fleets braced for the impact of the new offensive, a clear signal that the war was not yet won. Elias spent long hours strategizing, toggling between preparations for war and drafts of peace agreements. Each decision was a stroke painted on the vast canvas of the galaxy's future, each action a step toward a hoped-for harmony that had eluded them for so long. The galaxy stood at a precipice, the possibilities of peace and the continuation of war hanging in balance. As the Goliath journeyed through space, each star they passed seemed to watch in silent anticipation of the path that would unfold. As the Galactic Union faced the reality of both ongoing conflict and tentative peace, the situation necessitated an unprecedented level of strategic dexterity. The Union's fleets were ordered to maintain their defensive postures while diplomats worked feverishly to cement the ceasefire agreement into something tangible. The Goliath served as both a command center and a diplomatic envoy, navigating the turbulent waters of war and peace with cautious optimism. Elias felt the weight of every decision, knowing the galaxy teetered on a knife edge. In the command room of the Goliath, screens displayed real-time updates of fleet movements, diplomatic messages, and intelligence reports. The dichotomy of preparing for peace while waging war was a grueling challenge that tested the resolve of even the most seasoned veterans. Mira Thal approached him with the latest intelligence. "The ceasefire is holding in 3 sectors, but there are reports of skirmishes along the outer rim. Some Vakarth commanders are pushing back against the peace agreement." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the map. "Deploy our mediators to those sectors. We need to show that the Union respects the ceasefire but will defend itself if provoked. It's a delicate balance, but essential." The diplomatic efforts were further complicated by internal dissent within the Vakarth ranks. The faction that had agreed to the ceasefire was significant, but not universally controlling. Rebel Vakarth groups, seeing the ceasefire as a betrayal of their conquest ethos, escalated their assaults, aiming to undermine the peace faction's credibility. Amidst this complex web of conflict, a summit was organized on neutral Station Zeta, inviting leaders from all factions and species within the Union, as well as representatives from the cooperative Vakarth faction. The summit was a bold move, fraught with risk, but necessary to demonstrate the potential for a broader, more inclusive government. As leaders gathered, the station transformed into a fortress of diplomacy. Security was tight, with every corridor and meeting room monitored. The delegates arrived under heavy escort, their expressions ranging from hopeful to defiant. Elias, leading the Union's delegation, opened the summit with a call for unity. "We are here not just to end a war, but to build a future together. Let this summit be a testament to our collective desire for peace and prosperity." The discussions were intense, stretching into long hours. Agreements were drafted, then redrafted. Compromises were made on territorial disputes, resource sharing, and the integration of Vakarth systems into the Union under autonomous governance. Each step forward was hard-won, each concession carefully weighed. As the summit neared its conclusion, a critical agreement was reached. The Treaty of Zeta, named after the station that bore witness to their negotiations, was signed by all parties. It provided for a cessation of hostilities, a framework for the integration of rebel factions, and the establishment of a joint peacekeeping force. The signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, a historic moment watched by billions. Elias stood by the delegates, his face somber but hopeful. "Today, we begin the hard work of healing and building. This treaty is not just words on paper, it's a promise to our future generations." Returning to the Goliath, Elias looked out at the stars. The war was not over. Skirmishes would continue, and the peace they had brokered would need defending. But for the first time in decades, there was a palpable sense of progress. The galaxy, once darkened by the shadow of relentless conquest, now showed the first signs of a new dawn. As ships traversed the starlit skies, no longer just on missions of war but also of rebuilding, there was a sense that the balance of power had shifted, not just in terms of military might, but in the courage to pursue peace. Elias knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but as the Goliath sailed through space, its course set towards the next challenge, he felt ready to face whatever came next, buoyed by a fragile yet fervent hope. The final chapter of the war was closing, and the first chapter of peace was slowly, cautiously being written.